Yeah, hi there. These comments are for Rafat. This is Michael, the founder, owner, and the materials writer for the 7-step system to pass the TOEFL IBT. And you're one of my students. And you've also paid for the additional service to have me error correct and comment on some of your independent and integrated writing practice tests. And today you submitted an integrated writing practice test. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. I'm going to give you a score, and I'm going to go ahead and make some suggestions as to how you can make this better than what it is. Excuse me. Okay, so I think you have your Columbus is a very unique man in human history, so that many writers and lecturers spoke about his life and acts. We can find that reading passage that speaks about him as a man who discovered that the world was not flat and proved that by his trips. This is the main major point of reading passage. Lecture, on the other hand, refutes this completely, saying that Columbus knew only but not discover that the earth was round. It also goes through another deep conception that it mainly discussed it, which is found by a myth spread. This myth, lecturer, can go back to 15th century, but it takes place of knowing and acceptance by 19th century. At this time, two atheist authors wrote two books trying to fight religion by using science against it. These books were published in 1874 and in 1896, using clearly the flat earth myth to help spread their argument against religion. However, all textbooks included it after 1880. So to summarize, reading passage made Columbus to be a discoverer of earth flat. Being earth flat was not flat depending on his trips. Lecture gave a point of view for misspread for earth, for being earth was flat. Okay, we got trouble here. But the good news is I think you understand what you've read, you understand what you've listened to, you understand that the lecture is casting doubt on the information, and that's really what the question is. It says summarize the main points in the listening passage explaining how they cast doubt on the information presented in the reading passage, right? So you're focusing more on what the lecture is doing, right? So I think you understand the idea there, but you're just struggling so much with your grammar, your vocabulary, and even your organization a little bit. This is going to bring your score down pretty low. So I'm guessing right now you're probably looking right around 1.0 to 1.5 out of 5. So probably anywhere from 8 maybe to 12 points out of 30 is probably about all you're going to get on this particular writing task. Now, the one thing I'd recommend in the beginning is say something like this. You say something like, in this set of materials, the reading passage asserts that Columbus set out on his first to prove to the world that the earth was not flat. And the lecture cast doubt by saying something like this. So you might say, in this set of materials, the reading passage asserts that Columbus set out on his voyage to prove to the world that the earth was not flat, and the lecture cast doubt by saying that Columbus, like many others during his time, already knew the earth was not flat. So this kind of sets up what's going on here. What you've done here, you have too many. You want to get right to the point. You want to focus on what you think the main point of the two sets of materials are, or the two set of materials here. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. So you have the lecture, on the other hand, refutes this completely by saying Columbus knew only but not discovered that the earth was round. It also goes through. Now here's where I think that you need to separate these two ideas, because if you think about the lecture does two things. And this is, you can probably organize your paragraphs accordingly. Now remember that my integrated writing tasks, they're not as organized as the TOEFL. The TOEFL will neatly package. You'll have like points A, B, and C mentioned in the reading passage, and then the lecture will refute each of those points A, B, and C. But basically here you have only one key point according to the reading passage, and the lecture refutes that one key idea, and then it presents evidence of why it refutes that idea. So what you can do is you got to do two things here. Number one, explain what the evidence is that the lecture provides that refutes the idea that Columbus did not already know that the earth was round. So you have to present that evidence, first of all. But second, you have to explain why people thought this about Columbus. And there's actually something important in the lecture. It's called the myth about Christopher Columbus. There's something that we were taught in our textbooks that was not true about him, right? So let's get into, you might say something like this. Claims after Columbus returned back to Spain on his first voyage, he was able to confirm his theory that the earth was round, implying that he did not know for certain that the earth was flat, was round before. Voyage, something along those lines. So I think now we've kind of set up what the key idea is. The key idea is the assertion that Columbus returned back to Spain on his first voyage to confirm his theory that the earth was round, implying that he did not know for certain that the earth was round before his voyage. However, according to the listening passage, or you might say this, however, the listening passage refutes this idea, claiming that the earth was, or claiming that Columbus there were several people mentioned here. That Columbus, and we'll say his contemporaries, so you would say, however, the listening passage refutes this idea, claiming Columbus, his contemporaries, philosophers long before the birth of Christ. Who else does it say in the passage? Medieval scholars. And even the Greeks all knew that the earth was round and not flat. You see what I'm saying? So you didn't really say that in yours. You have to do more of that, because the lecture mentioned a lot of, now I'm not giving all the specific names of all those people, but it is important to say, however, the listening passage refutes this idea, claiming Columbus, his contemporaries, philosophers long before the birth of Christ, medieval scholars, and even the Greeks all knew the earth was round and not flat. Now this is where we have to work on your transition a little bit. So you have some good ideas here in this one paragraph, but we have to make a transition. You have to say something like this: in addition to providing evidence to prove that Columbus already knew that the earth was flat. So in addition to providing evidence to prove that Columbus already knew that the earth was flat, the lecture further argues that the idea that Columbus did not know that the earth was round is a myth. So let's take a look at the lecture. Further argues that the idea that Columbus did not know the earth was round is a myth which was perpetuated. And this is what you have here. I think we got some ideas here. We can look at this. Now it says in the lecture, it says this myth can be traced directly to two very influential 19th century books. So influential 19th century books. And I don't think that it's that important that you know exactly the names of the books, but you definitely need to talk about why or what the motivations were. So I think you're getting there though, so let's keep going. Now you keep talking about the 15th century. But according to the lecture, it says the myth can be traced directly to two very influential 19th century books, The History of the Conflict Between Religion and Science by John William Draper, a physician, published in 1874, and The History of the Warfare of Science with Theology in Christendom by Andrew Dickson White, the first president of Cornell University, published in 1896. So this 15th century thing is so I think what you're saying is Columbus's ideas, we're talking about his ideas, which are the 15th century, right? But it looks like the lecture is not really referring to the 15th century when Columbus went out on his voyages, but the lecture is focusing more on the 19th century and specifically these two books, which is I think what you want to get into right now. I think you're getting into it here. Okay, let's see what you have. So you said at this time two atheists, you can probably just say adjective here, two atheist authors wrote two books trying to fight religion by using science against it. You have these books were published in 1874 and in 1896. Yes, you got your dates right, using clearly the flat earth myth to help spread their argument against religion. Yes, this is good for you. This is good information. Then you probably put a comma here. However, all textbooks included it after 1880. Interesting. So before 1880, textbooks did not claim that Columbus set out on his voyage to discover that the earth was round. They didn't do that. It wasn't until these two authors published these books, and from the books it influenced the textbooks, and it kind of changed history. It's called revisionist history, right? Okay, so what you didn't exactly get is why they did this. So there is something that we have to add to, is the motivation. I think we need to add something in here. So you have these books were published in 1874 and in 1896 using the flat earth myth to help spread their argument against religion. The purpose of these writers was to use false, dangerous, political, philosophy create a war between science and religion. And then you might say, science was the only source of truth. Something like that. So we're going to put this here, combine this paragraph here. So we say, at this time, two atheist authors wrote two books trying to fight religion by using science against it. These books were published in 1874 and in 1896, using clearly the flat earth myth to help spread their argument against religion. The purpose of these writers was to start a false and dangerous political philosophy probably a little wordy here. You already said we don't need to say this. Maybe that'll work. You might say, these books were published in 1874 and in 1896 using the flat earth myth to help spread their argument against religion. The purpose of these writers was to start a false and dangerous political philosophy, thereby positioning science as the only source of truth. Then you want to say something like, as a result of these two books, believed that the earth was flat. Might say here, this is where the 15th century thing comes in, right? '15th-century scholars such as Columbus, as a result of these two books, the idea that 15th century scholars such as Columbus believed that the earth was flat maybe change this to not to that but to this, the myth that 15th century scholars such as Columbus believed that the earth was flat was included in school textbooks after 1880. There we go. Now that's a fat paragraph. I think we're going in the right direction. Now we're ready for our conclusion, right? So you have to summarize. Reading passage made Columbus and the lecture. Okay, so we're kind of getting there. You might say something like, to sum up, that Columbus discovered was refuted by the lecture, something like that, and that's probably good enough for right now. Okay, so maybe one more thing that we might add here. Which claims that the flat earth myth started by some scientists in the 19th century. I think we got it. Here we go. Alright, so now let's take a look at it one more time. So if we take a look from the beginning, and of course we need to edit and kind of go through it one more time. We have, in this set of materials, the reading passage asserts that Columbus set out on his voyage to prove to the world that the earth was not flat, and the lecture cast doubt by saying that Columbus, like many others during his time, already knew the earth was not flat. The reading passage claims that after Columbus returned, you might want to put a comma here, after Columbus returned back to Spain on his first voyage, he was able to confirm his theory that the earth was round, implying that he did not know for certain that the earth was round before his first voyage. However, the listening passage refutes this idea, claiming Columbus, his contemporaries, philosophers, long before the birth of Christ, medieval scholars, and even the Greeks all knew that the earth was round and not flat. And this is key. This is a transition. It does two things here, Rafat. It connects the evidence that the lecture is providing along with the motivations of why this myth was perpetuated. It says, in addition to proving evidence to prove that Columbus already knew that the earth was flat, the lecture further argues that the idea that Columbus did not know that the earth was round is a myth which was perpetuated by two influential 19th century books. At this time, two atheists, I think we can also say probably scientists, two atheist authors wrote two books trying to fight religion by using science against it. These books were published in 1874 and in 1896, using clearly the flat earth myth to help spread their argument against religion. The purpose of these writers was to start a false and dangerous political philosophy, thereby positioning science as the only source of truth. As a result of these two books, the myth that 15th century scholars such as Columbus believed that the earth was not flat was included in school textbooks after 1860. So how about this? This is a little bit wordy. The flat, it's probably more efficient to say that. The flat earth myth Nah. How about this? I guess we can say it. So we said, notice this. I'm using what's called the fact that 15th century scholars such as Columbus believed that the earth was flat was included in school textbooks after 1880. To sum up, the reading passage's idea that Columbus discovered that the earth was not flat was refuted by the lecture, which claims that the flat earth myth was started by some scientists in the 19th century. And there you go. So what have we done here? I took your essay, which is approximately 1 to 1.5 out of 5, which will probably score anywhere from 8 to maybe 12 points out of 30, and we have moved this up into the 25 to 30 point range for the TOEFL. Now with this one, And I know some people are thinking, Michael, you have to do the sequencing, the reading, lecture, reading, lecture, reading, lecture. Yes, you can use that sequencing organization if you have exactly 3 points from the reading, you have exactly 3 points from the listening. But in this case, there was really one main idea that the reading passage discusses, and that was Columbus did not know the earth was round before he went on his first voyage. That was it. So the lecture refutes that one idea. And it didn't refute any other ideas from the reading at all, except for that one thing. So we focused a lot in this practice test about why the lecture disagreed with that one point. And we talked about the evidence that the lecture provided. And we also talked about the motivation or the origin of where the myth came from in the first place. All right, so anyway, good job. Thank you for submitting your writing practice tests. I hope I've given you some good ideas to get you going in the right direction.